He's going to let them go. They're off and racing.
The one to be on, as we mark your card on the weekend's racing.
This is Blazing Saddles.
And they're off. Is there any of the spark left to try and regain his crowd?
Denman is up and over safely.
And the match that was promised 12 months ago is now well and truly on again. Relentless, remorseless. Oh my goodness, you've got to expect it now.
This is Blazing Saddles.
Christmas may be but 2 weeks away, but here at Blazing Saddles, we're opening some of our goodies early as Cheltenham takes centre stage.
And it's Pocolan, the top weight, who pulls out a bit more from Great Endeavour. And Pocolan is going to win it for the second year running for the Stewart family.
Stay with us as we look ahead to a fantastic day's racing from Presbury Park. And we're also heading to Ireland, where Sunday's bleak forecast is brightened up by the John Durkin Chase.
It's Tranquil Sea from Javol as they go to the line. Tranquil Sea and Andrew McNamara will just beat Javol.
My name's Ian Brindle. I'm joined by John Ivan Duke and Jonathan Doidge, and you're listening to Blazing Saddles. The International Hurdle is the pick of the day's racing at Cheltenham, and a total of 8 entries have obtained for the contest. Among those 8 is Grandouet, who leapt into contention for the champion hurdle off the back of a scintillating performance at Haydock Park.
But breezing all the way up this long running, Grandouet simply has far too much class for him. The 16 times champion in the winner's enclosure again, and Grandouet, scarcely off the bridle, has routed them from Marsh Warbler and Dom to Lean.
Well, I'd like to say that his trainer Nicky Henderson joins us on the telephone, and Nicky, you must have been absolutely delighted with that performance.
Yeah, it was against 4-year-olds, and I think you have to bear in mind here, this race has changed complexion enormously in the last 48 hours. Menorah came in and then overturned. Now, the one thing with Grandouet, he is a 4-year-old, he's only in his second season. All of a sudden, what looked a sort of relatively substandard, what we used to know as the Beulah, it's become a very, very competitive contest, and it's going to be extremely informative. We're going to Cheltenham now. He was third in the Triumph Hurdle, so you know, he doesn't act round Cheltenham, but just to see how well he coached it now that he's a year older and a year stronger.
John, as Nicky alluded to there, this race has changed complexion markedly with Menorah and Overturn now very much part of the field.
Absolutely, and they both got leading chances in the race. Of course, Menorah won this race last year. Overturn, who's been in such good form for Don McCain, Jason Maguire booked for the ride again. This one's winner of the Coral Hurdle and the fighting 5th in the last few weeks.
So 2 obvious players there. Jonathan, one thing I got from Nicky Henderson was the worry about the horse still being a 4-year-old. How critical is his age in a race of this nature?
On the stats, it's definitely a burden. 4-year-olds have won 2 of the last 15 runnings of this, so not a big percentage. 5-year-olds do better. They're double at 4 wins from the last 15 starts. And Grandouet, he's inexperienced. We're going to find out a lot from this performance. Proven Cheltenham runners do well in the contest as well, particularly those who've been in the Greatwood. So there's a few pointers there in the stats that suggest that he's got a tough ask on.
Well, 12 months ago, Menorah proved successful in this race, and here's how he did it.
And Menorah is answering plenty of questions this afternoon in emphatic style and will come home and confirm himself as the real deal. Menorah beats Q-Khan and Silviniaco Conti.
John, he went on to be 5th in the champion hurdle. Are you surprised to see him back over hurdles?
I think it's surprising Menorah has gone back over the hurdles, but a horse who's got some real quality over the smaller obstacles, obviously 5th in the champion hurdle, 2010 Supreme Novices winner, a horse with plenty of potential to run big races over the hurdles. So I suppose it's not that surprising that Philip Hobbs has decided to revert to something that is proven.
Overturn was behind him when they met in the champion hurdle, though these days he's matured into a fine dual-purpose prospect. Here's how he managed to follow in the hoofprints of Pedlar's Cross in taking the fighting 5th.
And Overturn is still there, bidding to become the first horse to win the Northumberland Plate and the fighting 5th hurdle. Overturn in front by a couple of lengths to Binocular in second, who's trying to respond, but Overturn's digging in off the front, and he's riding a power-packed finish. Jason Maguire racing up towards the line, and Overturn has won the fighting 5th.
Jonathan, on paper, beating Binocular has to go down as a very solid effort. What was your take on the race?
I thought it was a very good effort in pretty tough conditions at Newcastle that day, and he's a horse I'm a big fan of in terms of his attitude, his running style, his versatility, and I think he'll be hard to beat here, although he didn't give his true running in the champion hurdle when tried at Cheltenham for the only previous time, 7th, beaten 16.5 lengths back in March.
And this race, John, wasn't actually on the radar for him 2 weeks ago.
No, but I guess when you've got a horse in form, you keep turning the horse out to try and go and win these big prizes, and I don't blame Connections for sending Overturn out again, despite quite a tough schedule in recent weeks.
Well, Paul Nicholls has 2 in the race in Bramport and Sanctuary, and it's very interesting, Jonathan, that Harry Derham keeps the ride on the first name by order of the Connections.
Yeah, it's good to see Harry rewarded for that Greatwood win. He was 8 lengths ahead of Sanctuary on that occasion, who doesn't look as good at this time of year as he does in the spring. He's now £8 better off with his stablemate, and with Ruby up and that run at his belt, he could still be a serious player in the contest, I think. But good to see Harry getting the ride, keeping the ride on Bramport.
And John Ireland have won this race twice in the last 7 runnings. What chance do you give Charles Burns of adding to that with Petone?
I think that Charles Burns' runner is probably best on soft ground, so if there's any rain about, it could play into the hands of Petone. It's interesting that AP McCoy's up on board, but it wasn't one for me.
Well, we've had a look at the leading protagonists. Who do you think will be winning?
Not sure about the win, to be honest with you, Ian, but I'm going to go with Clark's Choice as an each-way suggestion here. I think he's been overlooked in the race. He goes well up the track, he's got his ground, and he has won when fresh. And he might be a bit of each-way value with doubts about some of the other leading players in terms of how they've come into this race. It's his first run as well for Oliver Sherwood. That might just spark him up, and the string are in decent order.
For me, I'm also going for the value choice, which has to be Clark's Choice.
This
is Sky Sports News Radio.
The Spinal Research The Atlantic 4 Gold Cup is the big handicap of the weekend, with a number of progressive sorts lining up. It sees very much a rematch of the Paddy Power Chase.
And up the hill they come, and Great Endeavour is going to win this for David Pipe. What a meeting he's having. David Pipe, his first Paddy Power Gold Cup, wins it really well. In second place then was Quantitative Easing. Third home then was a great run from Duvet.
Nicky Henderson trains Quantitative Easing, and I asked him how he'd come out of the race.
He ran very, very well. He finished his race well too, so it didn't bottom him or anything like that. He's in good form, he's fresh and well. Divers always look very, very well handicapped, and he beat us last year, but hopefully the handicap has caught up with him, and he's also given us a chance for a Great Endeavour, so we can only go and try it. It's the obvious sort of objective for him, for a very valuable race, so I think he's well in himself. He doesn't know he's favourite, he doesn't need to know that.
Jonathan, the horse doesn't know he's favourite. Is he a favourite with you?
No, but he's well worthy of shortlist material considering how he ran with Great Endeavour in the Paddy Power, and given how much better off he is now at the weights with the winner. And a massive fan of the Henderson yard as I am, I'm going to be looking elsewhere.
One of the major stories en route to this race, John, is the fact that Tony McCoy has elected to ride elsewhere. What was your take on the decision?
I think it's very interesting. Obviously, Tony McCoy, with the choice of the rides in the JP McManus colours, you would have thought Quantitative Easing, that second in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, looking really good. And obviously, the horse has some nice form at Cheltenham to go on. So I thought it was surprising that AP's opted for Sunny Hill Boy instead. However, if you look at it a little bit closely, it makes sense. This is back to a trip that should suit. The horse was second in the Byrne Group Plate in 2010, so has some decent course form. And I think Tony McCoy, a shrewd choice and a shrewd judge of which horse to ride. Perhaps Sunny Hill Boy, then, is better value than Quantitative Easing.
Well, Divers seems to have become something of a Cheltenham specialist, and all is well, according to Ferdy Murphy.
Seems in great form. Couldn't be happier with it. The ground, hope, that they don't get any rain down to put on plenty of water. The ground should be grand. So, the race cutting up nicely, so we're looking for a big run.
Well, the trainer very much happy with proceedings, but Graham Lee, he won't be aboard. He got injured on Thursday. But worth noting here, Jonathan, that both Divers and Great Endeavour have not been missed by the handicapper.
Yeah, Great Endeavour now £10 higher than that Paddy Power win, which was authoritative, and this is his track as well, and his trip, and he goes on any ground. He did really well in the Hennessy, but for me, just doesn't get quite that far in spite of what was a kind ride there from Timmy Murphy. But for me, he's still got a big shout again here. If the ground stays good, then Divers has to have claims. He was 10.5 lengths adrift of Great Endeavour that day, and has got a £10 pull here, so with his ground he'd be entitled to go very close over a trip that suits.
We get a test of the Holden Gold Cup form, John, here with Medemy and Gizeo locking horns, and the market seems to suggest that we could be on for a reverse.
It's entirely possible. Giseo's got some good course form, has beaten Captain Chris at the course before, and Ruby Walsh taking the ride for Paul Nicholls. I think might have just been in need of a run. Medemy, of course, has finished third to Masterminded since in the Amlin. I think that they are very closely matched in this race.
So then, boys, in terms of selections, where are we heading?
For me, I've got to go with Ferdy Murphy's. I think Diver's got a pretty decent chance after that third in the Paddy Power. Does love it round Cheltenham, and obviously won at the festival back in March. I think could be another winner.
I'm going to take a chance on Salou Flow. Unexposed over fences after just 2 runs. An impressive 12 lengths win on good ground at Doncaster over a similar sort of trip in March of last year. Decent performance thereafter at Haydock behind Prance de Beauchesne. Conor O'Farrell claims £3. He'll have less than 10 stone to carry on his back. Conditions suit, trips ideal, and you can back him each way.
This
is Sky Sports News
Radio.
The Relkeel Hurdle is the last race on the card, and while it may not be one for the punters, there could be plenty of clues with regard to the World Hurdle. Oscar Whiskey placed in a champion last year, and he looked on course for a winning return at Ascot.
Overturn, Oscar Whiskey steps it in, and he's down when there's every chance for Non-Stop is left in second place, and the battle that was reaching a crescendo ends with Oscar Whiskey's capsized at the last, horse and jockey up, and Overturn is left clear in the Coral Hurdle.
Well, disappointment on the day for Connections, but not necessarily for Nicky Henderson.
I'm not going to say he would have won, but it would have been very tight, and we would give him £8. So, you know, in terms of Oscar Whiskey, that was going to be a good performance, whatever would have happened. Now, we're coming back to 2.5 without an overturn. There's plenty of opposition there. So we'd need him to be sort of nearly winning this if he's going to prove himself top class. We had an idea of moving up to 3 and having a look at big bucks. If he stays 3 miles, I genuinely think he'll be a threat, because he'll be a 3-miler with the right turn of foot. There's a lot of horses been trying to beat big bucks for the last 2 or 3 years, and they've failed for various reasons. They're either not good enough, or they don't stay, or they don't do this, or they don't do that. At least the one good thing about this horse is that if he did stay 3 miles, then he would have a serious chance of beating him, because he has a gear. But whether he's got a gear at the end of 3 miles, we don't know.
John, big bucks is obviously the benchmark for all staying hurdlers at present. What did you make of Nicky Henderson's comments there?
I think it's surprising that Nicky Henderson would be challenging Big Bucks' crown. Oscar Whiskey could well be the next one to sort of go on and win the World Hurdle after Big Bucks retires. It won't be challenging Big Bucks for the crown this year, though.
He's going to be a short price in the Relkeel Hurdle, Jonathan. What do you think Connections will hope to learn from this?
Well, not easy to say, other than it's a decent pot and is expected to win it. But he does face nothing from the top draw, really, in opposition here. I suppose, if anything, 2.5 mile win still keeps their options open as far as the World Hurdle's concerned. I'm inclined to agree with John, though. A very tough ask to take on Big Bucks. But if you don't try, you're never going to find out. And obviously we found out that he wasn't quite up to champion class in Hurricane Fly last year. For me, you might even look at bypassing the pair, unless you just want him to pick up some runner-up prize money, and look at the Aintree Hurdle, 2.5 miles, and have a real crack at that in the spring.
And for today, Jonathan, would you just be sticking with a win, or do you have maybe one you might want to put in a forecast with him?
Well, I guess that depends on prices at the time. If he's just a shade of odds on, then I'd be taking him for the win. If he's going to get plenty short than that, I still think any given day is going to make a good race of this, so I'd be taking the forecast.
This is Sky Sports News Radio.
Over in Ireland, an informative day of racing on Sunday has the John Durkin Memorial Chase as its highlight. Named after the man who was responsible for consigning the mighty Istabrack for JP McManus, this race has had a stellar roll of honour in recent years, including Kicking King, Florida Pearl and B4 Salmon. This year's renewal looks particularly competitive, and amongst the market leaders is John Cole, and I'm happy to say that his trainer Paul Nolan is with us. And Paul, this is a race he knows all about winning.
He's won the race before. He's in good form. I mean, the forecast, I believe, is very stormy and rainy for the rest of the week, which won't inconvenience us in any way at all. It's a decent sort of race. It'll be very hard to beat Robbie Hennessy's horse Ruby Light, who was very unlucky not to beat Sizing Europe convincingly in Gorn on his last run. So, I mean, he'll be worthy favourite, and he'll be very hard to beat. And also Eddie O'Grady's horse Tranquil Sea, who is a dual Grade 1 winner as well. He's no bad animal on his day. So it's a good race.
Wise words there from Paul Nolan, and all the talk, John, in Ireland has been about the battle with last year's winner, Tranquil Sea.
I think it's a really interesting race with plenty of dangers, not just Tranquil Sea. John Cole for Paul Nolan, of course, beat Cool Dine at Thurles. I would say has a little bit to find with Kempes on Leopardstown running in February, of course, who represents for Willie Mullins.
We can't have a conversation about any Grade 1 in Ireland without mentioning the name of Willie Mullins. What are your thoughts on his team?
Well, for this race, obviously, Kempes and Couldine now looking like the ones to go. I was amazed, to be honest, at the money for Kempes in last season's Gold Cup, even though he'd won the Hennessy at Leopardstown. Never had him down as a Gold Cup winner. Who knows, he might progress into a genuine contender this time, and a good win in the John Durkan would fuel confidence, even though this is over a significantly shorter trip. Couldine might still be up to winning a race like this on testing ground, but we do know all about him now, and I'd rather be looking elsewhere for the winner.
Favourite for the race in the anti-post markets was Ruby Light, and as trainer Robbie Hennessy has stated, the way here has not been easy. Is he a credible favourite under the circumstances?
Absolutely, he's got ground conditions to suit. I think has a huge chance in the race. And if you watch that race against Sizing Europe from last time around, Ruby Light was travelling really well. I think Robert Hennessy's runner has a strong chance of winning the race.
And for you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm going the same way, actually. That was a decent run behind Sizing Europe last time. I'd like to be with Ruby Light, though John Cole and Tranquil Sea I think are both tough to beat.
This
is Sky Sports News Radio.
Well, there's a look ahead to action upcoming this weekend, but we did have some very sad news on Friday morning emerging from the stables of Paul Nicholls, and that was that Denman, the former Cheltenham Gold Cup winner, has had to be retired on account of a leg injury. Paul Nicholls tells us more.
It's a relatively small injury. You know, if he was a younger horse, he'd definitely be back next season. But it's better it happens like, and we pick it at home than go and sort of, as it were, blow a tendon on the racecourse or something go wrong when he's racing. You know, he owes nobody nothing. He's been a fantastic horse, and he'll have, you know, best of everything now. You know, and having come back from a really major heart problem, which a lot of horses wouldn't have done that. I mean, it astounded me that he came back from when he ran moderate at Kempton after the heart problem, then ran second in the Gold Cup. You know, if he hadn't had that, he might well have won another Gold Cup. But yeah, he's been a great horse, and you know, like I said, you can't say enough about him.
Well, one man who was there at the start of the Denman story is jockey-turned-trainer Adrian Maguire, and I asked Adrian if during his point-to-point career Denman looked something special.
Even just to look at him, he looked special. He was a big, imposing type. You know, once we started cracking on with him to run him in a pint, we pretty soon that he was special, and I think from when he was broke to when he ran and won his maiden pint, it was only 5 months, so that was just pure raw ability that a horse like that can do something like that. Terry Biddlecombe and Henrietta Knight were the first back down to the lorry to look at him and taking pictures of him, but once they heard that he was hobdead, they had no interest in him, and probably 6 weeks after he'd won his pint, I met Paul Nicholls at a different meeting, a different pint, and I said, you should come and have a look at this horse that's won a maiden for me. And well, when Paul first saw him, he says, yeah, love him. And, you know, I did mention to him that he was done for his win before he came and looked at him, and he says, that's fine. He says, it saves me doing him. So he wasn't afraid of that, and the rest is history, you know. He was just a fantastic horse for anyone involved and anyone concerned. He was a fantastic horse to be associated with, and he greatly helped me in the first few years of my training career, and no, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have anything to do with him.
Jonathan, John, he was a horse who had many opinions about him. What were yours?
For me, my favourite horse of recent years. That doesn't mean anything in terms of his status within the sport. That's just a personal thing. His 2 wins in the Hennessy Gold Cup, carrying top weight on both occasions, £11 more the second time around than he had done first time, and of course that great day in 2008 when Sam Thomas was carried to victory, beating Corto and the rest, will be things that live with me for a long, long time. I think he's a superb horse, and to finish second in 3 consecutive Gold Cups in an era which I think is a golden era for staying chasing speaks volumes.
He's not known as the Tank for no reason. A wonderful horse, superb horse. I think it's just a shame that he was around at the same time as Corto Star. Brilliant horse. I think that they need to get a statue of Denman at Newbury and at Cheltenham, 2 courses which he absolutely loved.
Well, our good wishes go to Denman on his retirement, but we won't be retiring for too long, because we're going to be back with you next weekend when the accent will be very much on hurdling at Ascot, when Big Bucks comes out to play in the long walk hurdle and the handicappers have their day in the Ladbroke.
The UK's only 24-hour sports news radio channel.
You're listening to Sky Sports News Radio.